Hello everyone, welcome to Get Snoozy, where you relax, you listen, you sleep. Today, we bring you a collection of stories that will tear open the wounds stitched beneath our smiles. It's rain and thunderstorm outside. As the storm hums against the glass, let this story wrap you in warmth. The air was thick with the scent of roses as Eliza slipped through the garden gate, her silk dress snagging on a rogue thorn. She winced, brushing it off, her eyes darting through the shadows for Thomas. The moon hung low, bathing the estate's manicured lawns in a silvery glow, turning the familiar into something magical. But this wasn't a fairy tale. It was a gamble, a stolen moment that could unravel her entire world. Her pulse raced, not just from the fear of being caught, but from the ache of wanting him so badly she could hardly breathe. Then she saw him, Thomas, stepping out from behind the gnarled oak tree, his soldier's uniform creased from a long day, his dark eyes catching the moonlight. "Eliza," he whispered, his voice rough with relief, and she didn't hesitate. She ran to him, her hands finding his, their fingers locking together like they'd never let go. "I shouldn't be here," she said, her voice barely above a breath, even as she pressed closer, her forehead resting against his chest. His heartbeat thumped steady and strong, grounding her. "I know," his lips brushing her hair, "but I can't stay away, not from you." She tilted her head up, meeting his gaze. "Father's arranging my marriage to Lord Harrington. He's twice my age, Thomas, and he stares at me like I'm a horse he's bartering for." Thomas's jaw clenched, his grip tightening. "I won't let that happen. We'll figure something out." "How?" Her voice cracked, desperation seeping through. "You're bound to the army, and my family, they'd rather see me miserable than with you." "I'd desert for you," he said, fierce and sure, his eyes blazing. "I'd burn it all down if it meant keeping you." "Don't," she pleaded, tears stinging her eyes. "I couldn't live with myself if you got hurt because of me." He cradled her face in his hands, his rough thumbs brushing her cheeks. "Eliza, I've loved you since that day in the market, your hair a mess, haggling over apples like you weren't the richest girl in town. I'll fight for us. Just tell me you will too." Her breath hitched. She'd spent her life being the perfect daughter, smiling through expectations she hated. But with Thomas, she felt free, like she could finally breathe. "I will," she whispered, "for us." The dining room buzzed with the clatter of silverware and forced chatter. Eliza sat rigid at the table, her untouched plate a silent rebellion. Her father cleared his throat, his broad smile cutting through the noise. "Wonderful news," he declared, lifting his wine glass. "Lord Harrington has proposed to Eliza, and I've accepted on her behalf." Her fork slipped, clanging against the porcelain. "Father, no!" she gasped, but her mother's icy glare pinned her in place. "It's an honor, Eliza," her mother said, voice clipped. "Lord Harrington's wealth and title will secure your future." Eliza's stomach twisted. She'd met Harrington, his thin lips curling into a smirk, his eyes roving over her like she was a painting to hang on his wall. The thought of his hands on her made her skin crawl. She couldn't marry him. She wouldn't. Across the table, her little sister Charlotte watched, her 10-year-old face alight with curiosity. Charlotte adored Eliza, always begging for stories, tugging at her sleeve for attention. Leaving her would hurt, but staying meant losing Thomas, and that pain cut deeper. That night, Eliza perched on her bed, her mind a storm of what-ifs. A soft knock broke her spiral. "Come in," she called, and Charlotte slipped inside, her nightgown dragging across the floor. "Are you okay?" Charlotte asked, climbing beside her. "You looked sad at dinner." Eliza forced a smile, tucking a strand of Charlotte's hair behind her ear. "I'm fine, Lottie, just tired." Charlotte frowned, unconvinced. "Is it about your marriage? Are you excited?" Eliza's chest tightened. How could she tell her sister she was planning to run, to leave her behind for a man she wasn't supposed to love? "It's complicated," she said. "I'm still figuring it out." Charlotte threw her arms around Eliza, squeezing tight. "I don't want you to go," she mumbled into her shoulder. "Who'll braid my hair?" Eliza hugged her back, blinking away tears. "I'll always be your sister," she said, her voice thick. But as Charlotte snuggled closer, guilt gnawed at her. Running meant breaking Charlotte's heart, and maybe her own. Miles away, Thomas sat by the barracks campfire, the crackle of flames drowning out his mate's laughter. He should have been strategizing for their next patrol, but his thoughts were with Eliza. Her laugh, the way her eyes lit up when she teased him. "Oi, Thomas." Will, his closest friend, elbowed him. "You're off in the clouds again. What's eating you?" Thomas shrugged, staring into the fire. "Just worn out." Will smirked, lowering his voice. "It's that lass from the estate, isn't it?" Thomas stiffened, checking no one else heard. "Quiet," he muttered. "No one can know." Will sighed, his grin fading. "You're dancing with danger, mate. If her folks catch wind—" "I know," Thomas cut in, his gut twisting, "but she's worth it. Will clapped his shoulder, eyes soft. Just watch yourself. Love like that. It's a bloody battlefield. Thomas nodded, but his heart had already enlisted. They met at their secret spot, a grove by the river, the water glinting under the moon. Thomas paced, his boots scuffing the dirt, until Eliza appeared, her face pale but determined. "Eliza," he said, pulling her close, "I thought you might not make it." "I had to," she said, gripping his jacket. "I can't marry him. I won't." "Then let's go tonight," he whispered. "I've got a horse. We'll be gone before dawn." She hesitated, Charlotte's voice echoing in her mind. "My family, my sister." "They'll come around," he said, tilting her chin up. "And if they don't, we've got each other. That's enough." Eliza searched his eyes, finding strength there. "Okay," she breathed. "Let's do it." But plans don't always bend to will. Back home, Eliza paced her room, the clock chiming midnight. Thomas was waiting. She could feel it. She grabbed her cloak, but the door wouldn't budge. Locked. "Father!" She banged on it, panic rising. "Let me out." "I know what you're up to." Her father's voice boomed through the wood. "You're staying put." Her breath quickened. She couldn't miss Thomas. Glancing at the window, she saw her chance. A risky drop, but doable with tied sheets. Hands trembling, she knotted her bedding, anchored it to the bedpost, and climbed out, the night air biting her skin as she lowered herself to freedom. Thomas fidgeted with his watch, the minutes dragging. Where was she? Every rustle made him jump, his hand on his knife. Then footsteps. He braced himself, but it was Eliza, wild-haired and breathless. "What happened?" he asked, steadying her as she stumbled. "Father locked me in," she panted. "I climbed out." He stared, then laughed, kissing her hard. "You're bloody amazing. Come on, let's move." They mounted the horse and rode, the wind whipping past, Eliza's arms tight around him. They didn't stop until sunrise painted the sky, leading them to a sleepy village. A weathered chapel stood at its edge, and an old priest agreed to wed them, no questions asked. In the flickering candlelight, they vowed their lives to each other. Thomas slid a plain ring onto her finger, his voice breaking. "Forever, Eliza." "Forever," she echoed, tears falling as she smiled. Before moving to the next story, don't forget to subscribe and comment down where you're listening from. The Colosseum trembled with the fury of the crowd, their shouts rising like a storm over the sun-scorched sand. Livia sat high in the stands, her breath shallow, her hands clenched into fists beneath the folds of her cloak. The air was heavy with the tang of blood and dust. Below, Marcus stood alone, his broad shoulders squared against the iron gate that rattled open with a groan. His sword gleamed in his grip, his body coiled with the readiness of a man who knew death was near. The crowd saw a gladiator, a warrior forged in the fires of captivity, but Livia saw the man she loved, her secret, her defiance, her heart. Her pulse hammered in her ears, drowning out the cheers. She shouldn't be here. Her husband, Senator Gaius, had ordered her to stay away from the games, his voice cold with suspicion. But she had defied him, slipping through the city's bustling streets, her face shadowed by a veil. To the spectators around her, she was just another Roman noble seeking thrills. They couldn't feel the dread that gnawed at her, the way each moment Marcus stood in that arena carved a wound into her soul. The gate shuddered fully open, and a collective gasp rippled through the stands. Livia's eyes widened, her breath catching as a massive bear lumbered into view, its fur matted, its roar shaking the stone beneath her feet. Marcus shifted his stance, his gaze steady, but she saw the flicker of exhaustion in his frame. This was his final fight. If he survived, freedom awaited. She clung to that fragile hope, even as the beast charged. Their story had begun in the dim, dank tunnels beneath the Colosseum, where the gladiators were kennelled like animals. Livia had been there at Gaius's command, inspecting his investments, men whose lives were bartered for sport. Marcus was new then, a captive from a conquered province, his skin marked with scars that told of battles far beyond Rome's walls. He stood apart from the others, his head unbowed, his dark eyes meeting hers with a fire that stopped her cold. She felt it then, a pull she couldn't name. She returned the next day, and the day after, her visits cloaked as duty. He spoke little at first, his voice low and guarded, but over time he let her in. He told her of his village, of the rivers that ran clear, and the family he'd buried under a foreign sky. She listened, her chest tightening with every word, and in return, she shared her own truths. Her marriage to Gaius was a gilded prison, her days spent playing the dutiful wife to a man who valued her only as a pawn. With Marcus, she shed that mask, her spirit stirring in a way it never had before. One evening, after a fight that left him bloodied but alive, she found him in the shadows of the barracks. His arm was wrapped in cloth, his breathing uneven, and the flickering torchlight cast his features in sharp relief. She hesitated, then stepped closer, her fingers brushing his shoulder. His skin was warm, alive, and her heart raced at the contact. "You're reckless," she murmured, her voice trembling with relief and fear. He looked up, his gaze soft but unyielding. "I have to be," he said simply. "It's how I reach tomorrow." Their love took root in the quiet spaces they carved out of a merciless world. They met in hidden corners, a ruined shrine overgrown with vines, a narrow street where the city's noise faded to a hum. There, she could forget the chill of Gaius's presence, the way his eyes tracked her every move. With Marcus, she breathed easier, her laughter soft as she traced the calluses on his hands or listened to him hum a tune from his lost home. He never promised her a future. He couldn't, but in those moments, she felt a freedom she'd never known. The danger grew with their affection, a servant's curious stare, a guard's lingering pause. The threads of their secret began to fray. Gaius was a man of power, his influence a web that stretched across Rome. If he learned of her betrayal, his wrath would be swift and brutal. She pleaded with Marcus one night, her voice urgent as they stood in the shadow of a crumbling wall. "We could leave," she said, her hands tight on his arms. "Find a place where Rome can't touch us." His face hardened, though his touch remained gentle. "They'd find me, Livia, and he'd drag you back in chains." She knew he spoke the truth, but it didn't stop the ache in her chest, the longing for a life they could never claim. The morning of Marcus's final fight broke with a cruel clarity, the sky a relentless blue. Victory would mean his freedom, a chance to walk away from the arena's bloodshed. Livia whispered prayers to gods she doubted, her hope a thin thread stretched taut. She took her place in the stands, her veil low, her nerves raw as the crowd's anticipation swelled. The bear's entrance shattered her fragile calm. This was no fair fight. Gaius's hand was in this. She was certain. She glanced toward his box, where he sat with a faint, satisfied smile, his posture relaxed. Her stomach twisted. He knew. The realization sank into her like a blade. He had uncovered their love and turned it into this spectacle of death. Marcus moved with the grace of a man who danced with fate too long. His sword met the bear's claws, metal clashing against raw power. The crowd roared, but Livia's world shrank to the sight of him. His strength, his struggle, the blood that began to stain the sand. The bear swiped, and he stumbled, a gash opening across his chest. She pressed a hand to her mouth, stifling a cry. He fought on, his blade finding the beast's flank, then its throat. The animal reared, then fell, its massive body thudding to the ground. The crowd erupted, but Livia's relief was fleeting. Marcus swayed, his strength ebbing, and from the shadows of the gate, 2 more figures emerged. Gladiators, armed and fresh, their eyes cold with purpose. Gaius's doing, again. This was no path to freedom. It was execution. Marcus raised his sword, his movements slower now, his body a map of wounds. The first gladiator lunged, and he parried, but the second struck from behind, a spear piercing his side. He dropped to one knee, blood pooling beneath him, and Livia's vision blurred with tears. He looked up, searching the stands, and their eyes met. In that instant, she saw it all. His love, his sorrow, the goodbye he couldn't speak. Then the spear struck again, and he fell, his body still against the sand. The crowd's cheers faded to a distant hum as Livia sat frozen, her hands trembling. The gladiators stepped back, their work done, and the arena attendants moved to drag Marcus away. She rose, her legs unsteady, and slipped from the stands, her mind a haze of grief. That night, she bribed a guard to let her into the gladiator's crypt, where the dead were laid before burial. Marcus rested on a stone table, his wounds cleaned, his face serene in death. She approached, her breath hitching as she knelt beside him. Her fingers brushed his hair, still damp with sweat, and traced the lines of his jaw. "You deserved more," she whispered, her voice breaking. "We deserved more." She pulled the ring from her finger, the heavy gold band Gaius had placed there, and pressed it into Marcus's hand, closing his fingers around it. It was her last rebellion, a piece of her prison given to the man who'd set her soul free. She leaned down, her lips brushing his brow, and lingered there, memorizing the feel of him one last time. When she stood, the weight of her loss settled into her bones. She left the crypt, the night air sharp against her damp cheeks, and stepped back into the life that awaited her. Gaius's control, the endless masquerade. But Marcus remained with her, a quiet fire in her heart, a love too fierce to fade even in death. The stories may come to an end, but the thunder and rain will linger a little longer, keeping you company in the quiet of the night. Until we meet again with more stories on the next rainy evening, sleep well. and good night.